Welcome. By the show of hands in the audience, how many of you have knowingly made irrational choices? That's everyone, actually. And why would we do that? Because our brain is kind of a master trickster. At the one hand, we know what is best for us, and we know the rational choices that we have to make. But at the other hand, I say yes to have read the terms and agreements. We are going to explore today some underlying structures of the brain so that we can get a better understanding of how it affects how we use and how we create digital products. So our brain functions in a very peculiar way. And professor in psychology, Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, she explains it like this. That our brain is kind of trapped inside of this closed box. And that box is called our skull. And it does not know anything about what is happening in the world around it. It's just receiving signals of what is happening outside, and it does it in two ways. So first one is the physical way. It's noticed by your sensory inputs on your body. And the second one is past experiences. And the more it has a certain experience, the more the connections towards that reality is strengthened and biased. So why am I saying this? Because what we need to be aware of as creators of a product is that each one of our brains creates its own reality. And we are going to see that the design we make can affect that reality and our belief of what is actually real. And through the history, there has been a lot of attempts to try to figure out how the brain functions and how we can rationalize this irrational brain. We're going back to 1857. Anyone wants to guess what happened this year? You're absolutely correct. It's the beginning of structuralism. And what structuralism said is that everything in human experience can be broken down into basic structures or elements. It's kind of trying to rationalize the brain. And within structuralism, they have two concepts, which funnily enough is called structure and system. Where the structure part is the underlying framework, organization or framework that shapes our experiences. And this framework is kind of underlying and unconscious to us. And on top of that, we have a system. And this is the way individual elements of human experience relate to one another. And in the product world, or in the design world, we might call this design systems. Because in order to be able to create scalable products, we need to have good structure and we need to have a good system. So we rationalize this constructed concept, which is an idea on a web page. To say with a structuralist approach, a button is a learned concept, or button on a screen is a learned concept that has been repeated again and again and has become part of this unconscious framework that it functions like a button. But sometimes we as creators of products, we get too lost in this structure and the system and might forget to think about the irrationality of the brain. That our brain might not actually evaluate all of these small components when it sees it. And it cannot separate them from the experiences we have and our perception of the world. So a little bit further, we're going to 1912. There was a reaction to the structuralist way of understanding the brain. And they call it Gestalt psychology. And Gestalt psychology helped introduce the idea that human perception is not just about seeing what is actually present in the world around us, like the structure and the system. It is also heavily influenced by your motivations and your expectations. And many of you might be familiar with this concept because it's like the foundation of many of the design principles that we use today. And it introduced a way to look at the brain that it sees the world around us as a whole and not just the part or sum of the elements. So we will take a look at the perspective as a consumer in the beginning, and then we'll look at how we can use this knowledge to design solutions. So what I mentioned in the beginning is that what you believe to be true can be affected Didn't it change? Ah. Okay. Not sure why it doesn't change. Mm-hmm. Any technical help? Okay. Just think of some pause music. Okay, maybe it... I think we'll be back in a second. Yeah, I think we're back. Oh. Yeah. Nice. Sorry for that. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. So we'll first talk about the perspectives of the consumer, and then we'll look at how we can design good solutions. So, yeah, I need to click this. So what I mentioned in the beginning was that what you believe to be true can affect how you use a product. But what we believe to be true might not actually be that true. This one is the phi phenomenon. And what we see here as a spinning circle is just static dots that turns on and off in succession. But we see it as a spinning circle. And why would we do that? Because our brain fills in the gaps, and it does so by using our expectations to show us what we have experienced to be true in the past. Okay, so everything is maybe not as it seems or true as it seems. And let's see how this can affect us in our daily life. Many of you have probably seen this map before, and this is the Tube map in London. And this example is explained by Rory Sutherland, which is an advertising executive and author. And do you know which of these stops is the most used by non-locals, or the distance that is most traveled? It's actually between these two stops. It's between Covent Garden and Leicester Square. But the distance here is as far as I can throw a tennis ball. And the Tube map itself is a great design. It does the job very good. It makes it easy to navigate the tube. But it does not convey actual distance. So it can create this kind of false reality when I look at it. So even great designs can sort of be misleading at times. Because perception is based on our previous experiences and the conclusion we ourselves are making about the world. But who says that these experiences are actually true to begin with? Which leads us to another aspect, is that our brain is kind of lazy, in the sense that it wants to preserve itself. It wants to not keep doing a lot of tasks all the time. So if the information is not there, like in the Tube map, why would the brain go out of its way to figure out the information that it doesn't know that it's needed? Because at the end of the day, we do not have the capacity to only make rational choices. It would take way too much effort, and sometimes it wouldn't be fun either. And interestingly, these irrational choices can be made both consciously and unconsciously. So imagine you are in an orchard. You're trying to decide which apple to pick. On what do you base your decision? And most research into this has focused on how the brain uses visual information, such as features like shape, color, and size. But what about the effort? What is the effort required to obtain the apple? Does the apple at the top look better than the apple that hangs lower? And there was a research team that tried to look for to answer this question, and they made volunteers to decide whether dots on the screen were moving to the right or to the left by moving a lever either in the right hand or in the left hand. And if they thought that the dots were moving to the right, they were moving the lever in the right hand, and the opposite. But what the volunteers did not know is that one of the lever was slightly heavier than the other. And they found that the volunteers biased their decision away from the lever that was slightly heavier. So if it was unambiguous or hard to see whether a dot moved to the right or to the left, they always chose the one which was easier, a little bit easier to move. And even when they stopped using the levers, they asked the same question, and they didn't move anything. They still biased towards what they have experienced that was heavier than the other one. So it's not just big decision that is difficult to make and affects outcomes. Not even knowing what that a choice is a little bit heavier to make, you would bias towards the easier solution. So what is the effort that we are handing to our users? Perceptual decision, which is kind of the decision making in our world, is not simply determined by the incoming sensory input, which I mentioned in the beginning, which is kind of the structure in the system. But it also reflects gains and losses that accompanies that decision. Okay, so now we know that we can affect realities with our designs, and that the brain is sort of lazy and has a bias towards the solution which is a little bit less heavier to do. So how can we align digital products with the human behavior? It would be so time-consuming if I needed to be skeptical to everything I do. So I make irrational choices at times. I say yes to have read the terms and agreements, and I trust the influencers on Instagram even though I know they have been paid to say what they have said. So the rational criteria maybe does not apply in the same way. So we as creators of products has been given a trust from the beginning from the users that our products work as they expect them to do, or to how their expectations are wired, and that it is accompanied by gains rather than losses. So then it is up to us to decide what we do with the trust that we have been given. And another big factor, which I haven't touched upon, is emotions, which plays a large part in your perception. But I won't go deep into that here. Just know that trust is also an emotional state. So even though I rationally can trust your product, I won't trust it if I feel that your product is bad. So I will go into some points to make how to make our products trustable for our users. And to achieve trust, we have these 4 criteria. We must make the user feel safe and that they're in a safe environment, make them understand our product, make them feel that they achieve something, and also experience beauty. And to achieve these 4, we must create for predictability and stability, clear and helpful information, have a kind of a streamlined and simple workflow in our product, and also a delightful experience. So 3 pretty rational concepts, and then 1 that serves the irrational brain in this context. But what if we took away all of the rationality, all of the structure and all of the system? What would happen in our product? Would it be a good experience? Maybe not in this case. But how can we use our brain's view of the world to think outside the box? What if the room itself was guiding your way to your gate? Because we can use other experiences of the world to test our products that our users might have. So our experiences might be that a window means outside, and a downward direction means leading to something. So in this case, the roof itself could indicate that it's going towards a direction that I want to go in. Because we are allowed to think about the brain seeing the world as a whole, and not only the structure and the system that we are giving to it. In the new map of the tube system, we removed a lot of information was removed to help our lazy brain, because then we can read it more easily and we can navigate the map. It was a lot more information to digest in the old map, with all the twists and turns. But sometimes actually giving our brain more to do can help the brain create new patterns and make the user understand the context a little bit better. So as we saw on the tube map, we cannot give the users all the information all the time. But there is a concept that we can use called wayfinding. And this can help us help the user find their way in our piece of reality, which is our product. And it's quite simple. Just give the user the ability to understand, where am I? Where can I go? What will I find when I get there? What is nearby? And how do I get out of here? What's my escape plan? With these wayfinding questions, we can create an environment of trust. And we can help the user navigate by using constructs of the real world with answering these questions. So what to have in mind to design with the mind in mind? Because the questions we, as creators of a product, must answer is, what do we give the user and what do we take away from the user? What do I keep in the attention of the user to make my product make sense in that context? So to summarize, we are affected by this. What we see in the world around us, the effort that is required to do something, our experiences of the world, our lazy brain, and our expectations and our motivations. Because in that segment of our reality, that is a digital product, we can only digest and make certain amount of rational choices. How a product is designed can directly affect someone's world view. And with the rise of AI, we have an even greater responsibility to make sure that we understand how the brain works, and be aware that the brain doesn't have the capacity to constantly evaluate what is true in the world or not. And as designers, we're not immune to our brain either, because we bring in our worldview into our products, how we see it. So be empathic with your users. Know your bias. Try to think outside the perceptual box that is your own reality, because then we are designing with the mind in mind. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up to this talk, which will be about me having experimented with AI for the last couple of months, and trying to adopt it into my design process. I'm a designer at Variant's Oslo office. My name is Ole Petter, and for the last 2 years working there, I've been working across strategy, service, and UX design. So hopefully there's some interesting takeaways for all of you showing up here today. All right. The whole story began 4 months ago when a startup customer came into our Oslo office. And with him, he brought an AI-generated app. This one on the screen. And within 1 hour of prompting in this generative AI tool, which is called UIZard, he had made these wireframes, very proud of himself, making his vision into something more tangible. And we as designers, we noticed that this was generated. Straight away, we saw that this wasn't really like, it wasn't a good user experience, and the content didn't really have any coherence. But luckily, we had a 2-day workshop to tear everything apart, like get what's really the value of this app. And after 2 days, we thought we had the core of the concept, and we presented it back to the customer. Felt pretty smart. We were deciding on an MVP, which we wanted to test with some pilot customers. So we thought we did the right thing. The customer didn't agree. They pointed towards the app and said that we want more of this. With all of these great features and all of these visions we have for like this grand plan. And so this was kind of like a result of them having been anchored to the feeling of being able to prototype this within 1 hour. And what we noticed was how our customers had raised their expectations from using Gen AI. And yeah. And what worried me even further was like after having this customer meeting, which was quite uncomfortable, I went down to my hairdresser, which went on and on about the newest R1 model from DeepSeek and how he used Gen AI to make a new website for his shop. And so it felt like AI was literally everywhere. And maybe you guys have felt the feeling before of AI being kind of this mysterious digital creature surrounding us in our design process, not knowing what to do with it. And I think it's built on an AI hype with a FOMO driving it and a promise of a technology that drops daily news that's groundbreaking and a rumor that once it reaches its potential, it's going to replace us all. Yeah, dark stuff. So I was left in an existential crisis. Should I go back home taking farming lessons from my dad? Or should I let curiosity beat anxiety and ask myself the question of how should I integrate AI into my process? I choose the last one, at least for now. And the story began, or my journey began, and since my hairdresser knew, I thought I'd also brush up on my skills or knowledge about where AI was right now and where it was headed. And it's predicted that AI will rise in like 3 waves. And the first one is said to increase our effectivity in the work we do by mainly enhancing our work through ChatGPT, through processes we already are familiar with. And the second one is that it's going to raise our quality with specialized tools that are AI native. And thirdly, it's automation, where we work side by side with these AI agents, giving input to our processes and increasing both of effectivity and quality. So I thought I'd bring some examples of how this is already happening today between both product and business. And so the first one is how we do things today. Picture a worker sitting in Word, typing something for a presentation, a meeting, whatever, but the written text they're actually, or what they're writing is actually generated from using GPT. Another example is how Adobe Firefly lets visual designers have AI directly into their workflow. And they're now able to use Photoshop in a way that they can just prompt it with place a bird on this branch, and it's there. And so they're now manipulating photos in a whole different way that they did before. But it's not just across products that this is happening, it's also in business. And Not Milk is a business where they fed AI with the kind of molecular description of cow milk and made it make a plant-based version of it with the same flavor and the same consistency. And they also did marketing, generating different concepts and tried it with social media to see what gave the most engagement, and then they produced those actual products. And the last one is Showrunner, which is your Netflix, but with generated content. So imagine you're watching your favorite series, but it's got to have an end. Now consumers can actually generate further content, create their fan fiction, whatever, to further deep dive into the content. At least that's the vision for the final product. And so after having done my research, I was getting a story from social media and big AI to scale myself. That's what I felt I've been told. And they were telling me this story of like having 8 brains and 10 digital arms to do more and more and more without having to do anything myself. I could just delegate it to AI. But they were saying that, and it was kind of a cliche to me. And I tried it. I had generated presentations, I'd summarized workshops with it, and I'd even read a lot of applications from people searching for a job at our place, and they were all bad. Very bad. They've probably been better off doing it themselves. And at the same time, AI has this big promise of replacing us, so why should I start delegating it my tasks now? So I wasn't really left motivated to continue my journey. Fortunately, there's research saying something else, a far more enthusiastic narrative. And it's done by Harvard and a business consulting group, where they tasked 758 consultants with 18 knowledge-intensive tasks. So something you might find yourself doing as a consultant or a designer every day. And what they did was divide between AI-compatible tasks and incompatible tasks. And where the AI was good, it gave them a 25% increase of quality in their outputs and 12% increase of their effectivity. So check, AI has a big potential when we integrate it the correct way. And this was just tasks done by people who had minimal training in using AI from before. However, there was the other side of the research, where they used AI for the AI-incompatible tasks. And behind the promise of this productivity and quality gain, there was a huge error rate if you used AI for the non-compatible tasks. It was up to 20%, and this was mainly due to an over-reliance on AI. So you're kind of like unsharpening yourself, and they call this kind of a sleeping at the wheel effect. So it shows the potential risk of not or using AI for the wrong tasks and letting risk into your process. And this was also one of the main takeaways from the report, that it's really hard to differentiate between the AI-compatible tasks and the ones who are not. So I saw myself as having this to-do list with very blurry lines of what I should use AI for and not, which sparked the idea of an anti-to-do list, a safe list of tasks that I knew I could delegate AI to actually gain some quality and effectivity for my work. And here's the current state of my list. And I was thinking I should go into some different roles I do or have during my work as a strategic service and UX designer, and also a junior employee. And the first one is some Imagineering we've been done, where we've been writing some scenarios for some strategic work for Variant. And here you can see me generating text for the scenario to use. So I gave it a role and a task, and then fed it with a large context window to make a draft of the text I was going to produce. And once I had the text I wanted to go with, I asked it to make some metaphors where I could choose the one I liked the most. And then I knew the next step in my AI process, which was going to be to generate photos. So I made it write a prompt for the photo generating machine as well. And so, check, I had some text for a draft, and I had a prompt to go into Visual Electric, which is a tool similar to Midjourney, but it looks way more like Figma. And that's why I use it, because it takes the time I use to go from 0 to hero, like kind of the time to proficiency, because it's very similar to what I worked with before. And that's the thing with AI, right? It shouldn't be necessary to have to be prompting all the time, writing new prompts, but instead use tools that you're familiar with to get that productivity gain that we're actually looking for. So here's the result, some text and an image, perfectly ready for a PDF to send somewhere, be stored in someone's shelf and never be seen again, right? Or we could let AI elevate the content we actually use. We could use a tool like Lovable and prompt it to make a website, to make the content have further lifespan by having up-to-date information and making it more engaging by doing it interactive. So that's the first takeaway for AI. I think it can expand what we deliver, making it more of a multimedia experience instead of just a presentation like always. All right, so back to the list, and I want to go into the service design part. And I'm not very bullish about kind of like synthetic users, where you tell the AI to role-play your users, but however, I do like the idea of having some personas give me some critique to make me have more perspectives from the user base I'm actually working with. So I can validate the first drafts of concepts and stuff I'm working on. So here you can see I'm using something that's called a preset, where I've already fed it with some personas from my current project. And I'm asking it to kind of validate this concept I have. And then it plays back, based on 10 different personas, some different views. And I've told it to vary the personas across technical proficiency and age to get differing perspectives. And then at the end, it gives me a combined response, which I can read through, and maybe it sparks some idea into my creative process. Further on, there's something service designers does a lot, and it's getting to new domains and having to learn a lot very quickly. And there's also there's often very technical documentation of what you have to learn and stuff. Not exciting. What if there was a way to make it more exciting? So that's when we introduced the Google product, Notebook LM. It's a tool where you can feed it with different sources like PDFs and YouTube links. And you can make it mind maps, for example, to give you sort of this map of your whole domain and what you're supposed to learn. So now I have some kind of subjects that I want to elaborate on. I can ask it to elaborate, and I can even make it generate a conversation. So now there's two hosts talking about the subject, and I can use the interactive mode to actually make it, to ask some questions and start probing it with what's actually relevant to me, hence earning a personalized learning experience. And I can do this while driving, so maybe I get to more just because I can do this while commuting. And I want to also talk a bit about the UX designer process, which is mainly what I'm doing day to day. And I'm not going to talk about generating UI sketches, because I feel like that's my expertise. I don't want to let AI into that process. But however, I've seen a huge upside it making it more capable of actually coding. So now I'm not just pushing pixels, but I'm pushing code also. And one example of it is where I wanted to test some different components for a UI pattern I was making. So I actually told Claude to give me examples of different UI patterns. I chose one, gave it the stack we're actually using in our project, and then I made it prototype that component. And I feel like this is something I'm doing to make me, I don't know, step aside from focusing on each component and the aesthetics of it. And now I'm focusing more on like the whole experience of the interaction instead. So it kind of changes the way I design actually. Now you can see me playing with the UI pattern. It actually generated real time. And it's also allowed me to actually maintain my design token system. So I'm working in a startup where if I can ask this coding generative tool, which is called Cursor, to actually write the design tokens in or according to Tailwind's version 4, which is what we're using, then I can save off a lot of time, both from doing it, but also from not having to discuss this in meetings, and instead focus on more important subjects than design tokens. And also, no more colors in production, which I haven't seen before. And lastly, there's this meeting summarizing tool, which is called Granola. It takes a transcript from meetings, so it doesn't store anything else than just plain text that it's recorded. And I can then summarize it under headings. And now it's going to generate takeaways based on the headings I actually remember us talking about in the meeting and filling in the blanks. And this is great because I can now, during casual talks with product owners or strategic people, pick up insights which I can feed into my whole research for products. So that's a small list of experiments I've been doing, and it's a start, but it wasn't supposed to be something revolutionary, because I was going to be careful with what I actually delegated to AI. So the takeaways here is, when you're working with AI, be mindful of what's your work and what's AI work, because if you give it tasks that it's not compatible with, it's going to actually make your job and output worse. And secondly, reduce the overhead of collaboration with AI by using the same workflows again and again, not having to prompt the AI every time you're using it. Thirdly, I think it has a huge potential of actually broadening your design skill set. So I would now say I'm kind of like a UX design engineer, where I also work with code and write my own code. And service designers might have to automate processes. Instead of placing new roles for employees, they might work with AI agents that are directly integrated into our processes. And lastly, as a strategic designer, I feel more like a storyteller and an analyst also. So I've seen that it kind of like broadens my design responsibility, which is also supported by the fact that AI pushes more of your skills from 0 to 80% than from 80 to 100%. Yeah, lastly, experiment, make your own anti-to-do list. And just want to briefly bring you back to this, because this is the email we got back from our customer, where we made a report after the first initial meeting, where they were very happy with us adding some visual elements and also summarizing it in a neat report, where we, of course, used AI to do it. So the takeaway is that your customer doesn't care if you use AI or not. They don't feel the pride in your design process from having you done it yourself. And so I have my anti-to-do list, and if you want an update when I get to do the website where I shared with you guys, you can sign up for an email notification here. And that's it. Thanks for being an awesome crowd.
musikengelning. Jag kan prata svenska. Hej allihop.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Hi. Right. I'm here to talk about design meets sustainable business. And my name is Anita Steinsted, and I work at Variant Bergen in Norway. And my title there is strategic designer. But I'm not so bothered about titles. I'm more concerned about what I do and how I do it. Today I'm going to talk about design generally, design principles that I think all designers really should think about and focus on, no matter what type of designer they are. But my talk consists of my backstory to why I'm choosing this topic, so why I'm here, and why design is important in business. And then I'm going to introduce a framework that I've created. So it's the very first time I'm showing it to anyone. So, you know, be nice. I call it an experience. So I've worked 24 years as a designer, and both in the UK and in Norway, in public and private sector. So I've met quite a lot of different companies and organizations, and so I've witnessed what are their internal struggles and what are the key elements that they're focusing on today, and things that are bothering them. And another thing is that I'm quite passionate about creating better solutions for people and our planet, and it's something that I think generally all designers should care about and focus on, because we've got superpower to do something about it. I'm also quite a curious person, so I like learning new things. So, for instance, testing out new frameworks and getting feedback from others, I think that's really great. Okay, so as a designer, I often meet obstacles along the way. And one of them that I find quite frustrating is that when you're working on a really good design or innovative, concept, based on insights, based on knowledge from really clever people, we often meet that profit overrules good design and innovative ideas. And this is part of making it challenging to drive sustainable decisions. You know, the whole concept of profit overrules everything else. So that's like basically the reason why I'm standing in here. I think it's really important, and I want to overcome this obstacle. So there's an overload of information, not just from clients that I'm working with and other key partners. It's also as a designer and as an employee. I'm finding this overload of information of where to begin in the whole sort of sustainability journey. And I think a lot of us feel the same way. It's quite overwhelming, all the information and the jargons and where to start. And not also where to begin, but what to do. So like a classical thing is that, a lot of companies, they focus on climate reporting, which is great. We have to do it. But that shouldn't be the drive behind why we're doing what we're doing. So I actually call this the sustainability dilemma. I think this causes a lot of problems for many of us, not just myself, and also leads to greenwashing. So a couple of years ago, I was in a situation where myself and all my colleagues in an office, we had to put down the office basically, and these things can happen in anyone's sort of working journey, there was two different ways I could go with this. I could take the severance package and go on like an awesome holiday, or I could do something a bit clever with that money. And I'm actually quite grateful in many ways that I even though it was a negative experience at first, being in a situation where you can't work where you want to work, but at the same time very grateful that I was given this opportunity, because then I could learn a bit more. And so what I did was I invested this money, instead of going on a wicked holiday, I invested in something that I want to learn more about, and that was to understand how decision makers make those decisions, profit that overrules design and innovative ideas. I want to understand it a bit better. And so what I did was that I enrolled on an executive master's program in sustainable business in the Norwegian School of Economics. And these two professors here, fairly known in Norway, they're called Lars Jakob Pedersen and Sveinung Jørgensen, and they helped me through this journey. I think I was the only designer that was at this executive master's program. And so it was really interesting for me to be there and observe the conversations that a lot of decision makers and directors are dealing with today when it comes to climate change. So as part of this course, we were introduced to several theories and several great economic minds, and one of them is a person called Alex Edmans. And he's a professor of finance at London Business School, and he's written loads of books, and one of them is Grow the Pie. So basically, in Alex Edmonds, he's one of, the economists that have inspired my journey. One of the things that he talks a lot about in his research, and he's studied loads of different businesses. What he's seen is that his research supports the conclusion that companies prioritizing sustainability, innovation, and employee well-being tend to achieve stronger financial performance over time. Now, a classical example we can take is Patagonia, but there's so many more of them. And I find this really inspiring because I don't believe that, of course, profit's really important. We need a wage, we need to survive and pay bills, but that's not what drives us. So moving forward, just to solve, I won't have time to talk too much about sustainable business here, but one thing is that you can, as a takeaway, is the triple bottom line, which probably a lot of you have read about and heard about. And that's basically the balance between people, planet, and profit, and the equal balance between the three is what makes a product or a service or business model sustainable. But the true fact is that sustainable business is about replacing outdated, harmful practices with new and clever models that balance profit, people, and the planet. So the idea is that you're not necessarily supposed to change your whole business model. You keep the business model that's not harmful, that's working, and then you swap it with a sustainable business model and you test that out. And there's loads of them. And a typical one would be sharing economy. So no longer owning your own products, but renting or leasing or subscription deals. So you're sharing more than you're owning each of your own products. So that's a very typical one that's often used. But the key is all businesses that operate with this focus in mind, it's because they have a purpose. They're purpose-driven. And I was inspired about what David was saying earlier today. He was talking about small purposes, and it got me thinking, because I was like, actually, yeah, it is loads of different small purposes. It doesn't have to be one big purpose. So it got me thinking a bit. Well, see what you guys think after you've seen this. So here's an example for those of you that aren't familiar with this company. It's really, really inspiring. I recommend that you Google afterwards. And they're called Interface. And Ray Anderson, he's passed away now, but he was an industrialist, and he had this massive, big responsibility running this business with producing carpets, and he knew that, we're actually going the wrong way. We're going the wrong direction with how we're running the world. And as the founder of this company, I need to do something about it. So in 1994, him and a team of his employees, they launched Mission Zero. So the whole concept there, think about what I was just saying earlier on about that you're keeping the business model that's working, but you're swapping what's not working. So they wanted to carry on designing carpets and producing carpets. But instead of swapping the entire big carpet in big offices, they just took the part that was broken and swapped it with the tile. And that's where this concept of, switching from full carpet replacements to modular carpets. What's great about this, you were reducing waste by 90%. Now that's much more motivational for employees than like, whoo, we're making loads of money, right? So, and it's innovative. It gives, there's a certain freedom that comes by running a business in this way, because then more people, more members of staff want to do the same thing and come up with even more innovative ideas like this. So Interface, they built what I would say a sustainable culture, not a climate reporting culture. And this is the key thing that I observed amongst my fellow students when I was studying, was that they were trapped into like climate reporting because of EU regulations and loads of other regulations. And of course we have to do that, we have to measure it, but it's not much fun in that. We have to bring in the fun and sustainability. So Anderson was inspired by circular design, and I think that should be more actionable, innovative, fun, and embedded into daily operations. So what's all this got to do with design? So as a designer, the only designer that was on this course, I was thinking, this is quite interesting. There's loads of things that we do as designers every day that we maybe don't consider could have a huge impact in the way that we're working. So basically, communicating ideas and information clear through visualization is a key thing that we do. And I want to talk through some design principles that I see helps, how we can work together with other cross-disciplinary teams. Now, another element is the empathy need finding. We do this all the time. We need to understand the people that we're designing for, what their needs are, what their challenges are, what obstacles are they meeting. And we use a visual communication to understand that and for others to understand it. We simplify. We take the complex information and we try and simplify it so it's easier for other people to understand. That's one of the things that I think is problematic with sustainability, is that it's information overload. And I think, designers can help communicate that much better. We study human behavior, interesting what Vegard was talking about earlier on, which is really important to identify patterns and opportunities. Form and function. I hear a lot of people say function over form, but form and function to me go hand in hand. It's equally as important. You need to make and design products and services and processes to be desirable, or else people won't use it. I've used loads of functional products before where they haven't considered the aesthetics or the form of it, and then I stopped using it. So it's really important to think about that. How does it actually look? And then problem solving. I'm not saying that this is only designers that do, loads of, no matter what background you come from, you're problem solving. But it's something that we have top of mind when we're working every day. And then finally, we experiment and we test what we do. We're really curious to find out, do people like what we're creating? And why don't they like it? How can I make it even better? And if you're a designer and you don't focus on that, then you need to go back to the drawing board, because that last bit is very, very important. So bear this in mind when I'm going to introduce to you a new idea. So Simon Sinek, I hope most of you are familiar with him. I very, very often used the golden circle theory in loads of different types of projects I work on, because it's so simple. I think the golden circle is a really good example of a simple idea, form and function, and it helps organizations to understand why they do what they do. And this principle I've used in branding, and I've used it with product development, and I think it works in so many different ways. But what's really unique about it, and the reason why I'm using this as inspiration, is because most companies, if you start with asking them what they do, they can easily say what they do. And they can also say how they do it. But as soon as you ask them, why do you do what you do? You'll maybe get 10, 15, 20 different answers from employees from the same company. So we need to find an alignment on what is the purpose of why we are doing what we're doing. And that's the key question, why? So what happens when design meets sustainable business? And these are my takeaways, and this is how I've sort of digested all the information that I've learned from, sustainable businesses, and how to bring forward the good theories from all these economic minds that I've been inspired by, like Alex Edmonds. So what I would like to do is to introduce to you for the first time this framework, which isn't called the golden circle, but it's called the verdant circle. And I've been really cheeky and I put a trademark on it. Apparently you're allowed to do that, but we'll see if I have to remove it. But verdant, that means green, lush, and full of life. Metaphorically also means something that's new and fresh. So I feel like this, for me anyway, this framework, it sort of sums up what this is about. So building on from what Simon Sinek was doing with the circle, we still have to start with the why, the purpose of what is it we're doing and why. And then we move on to the process, also how, and then what. So the goal here is to align leadership and key stakeholders. And when I'm saying key stakeholders, I mean employees, I mean clients, partners, the whole ecosystem when I'm talking about this, board members, all decision makers. And we also need to kickstart, well, I recommend to kickstart a sustainable, purpose-driven organizations that gathers a team of people passionate to the cause. So a really good example is actually Variant, where I'm working. The people that are working with sustainability there, they're not told like, you have to work with this. They are all passionate people that are just really interested and keen to kickstart how can we drive sustainability in our own organization. And I find it really inspiring. I think they've done a lot of really great things. But I think you need these champions to drive engagement and help implement the Verdant Circle framework. So that's my first kickstart to how I would use this framework. So you start with the why. Why does our organization exist beyond profit? That's got to be key, because profit, that's a result. That's not what drives you. It doesn't. Yeah, it's great knowing that I've got a wage when I wake up in the morning and I can pay the bills. But that's not what gets me out to go to work. So we need to find out what is the key, sustainability purpose that drives us. And I think that should be, it's not just a general purpose. I think sustainability needs to be at the top for this to work. So you start with creating a one-sentence sustainability purpose statement. And as you can see on the right-hand side, I've created a template that can be used for this. There's many different ways you can do it, but I often find templates can help to create sentences and come up with new names. But you basically start off with assembling a cross-disciplinary team to create one or more purpose statements. So it's nice to maybe have 2 or 3 different ones that you can A/B test later on, right? And then you develop, as a guideline, you can develop real-life narratives based on stakeholders' needs and concerns today. So what you need to do is, like, for instance, with personas or understanding situations, you need to sort of use narratives to help you discuss, to make that discussion for what is the actual, what should this statement be about. But it's about today. And then moving forward, you can illustrate future scenarios to explore possibilities. You're looking at the facts today, and then you're moving into scenarios. And these are like guidances to help you to create this purpose statement. Now, an example of, I've just tested this myself, DNB, which is Norway's largest bank, they have not written this. So I've not spoken to anyone at DNB. I've just tested this out. So I use them as a guinea pig. So for instance, I've written, we drive sustainable change, which is the core belief, by financing and guiding businesses through the climate transition. How you achieve it, because we believe in creating lasting value for both society and the environment, bigger impact or values. Now, wouldn't that be amazing if the largest bank in DNB used this as their purpose for why they exist today, rather than profitable gain? I don't know what the purpose-driven statement is, but for me as an employee, this would inspire me to think of more innovative ideas. So moving on from the first part is starting with the why, is how. How make sustainability a part of everything we do? So a guidance to that would be, for instance, create a hub. It could be, for instance, like a research and development group for testing new ideas. And you can also launch small, small-scale pilots. Where I'm working at the moment, we do that all the time. And then, of course, using agile methods, which I think is really useful. You know, I spoke to a lot of economists and people that aren't designers, and they're not necessarily familiar about everything that we do with design principles and agile methods, but you can use it in helping with these statements. So it could be, for instance, testing ideas on various stakeholders, A/B testing different statements for feedback. Try out the MVP canvas that my colleague Andreas is going to talk about later on today. I recommend that you go and listen to what he's got to say. You can run sprints, iterative cycles with specific time-limited goals. And of course, always important, use rapid feedback loops. Always be transparent to test new ideas and statements, whatever, and try and get feedback loops. I'm hoping that you guys will do that today after you've seen this. Send me an email, what you think. And sprints, when I'm saying sprints, it could be business sprints, could be Google design sprints, could be any type of sprints. You decide, right? Depending on the purpose. And also, what's really key is to remember to follow your statement. So the statement is constantly the Northern Star. So that's at the top. You don't move away from your statement, because when you're testing these new ideas and these new products, you need to have something, you know, a baseline. You need to have a context to follow. And it could be that when you're testing ideas, that your statement changes a bit, that you realize like, you know what, this statement's it's a bit unclear. Let's simplify even better, or let's make it a bit more unique. And maybe in some cases it can feel a bit like greenwashing. So you can use these guidances to try and change your statement. Because the statement needs to work over time. It's not something that's just going to function for a year. I see it as something that's going to last for a while. So remember the Northern Star. At the very end, when you've gone from why and you move from how, you move from the last bit, which is what. What actions must we take to achieve our sustainability goals? So now we're turning purpose into action. And this is really key, because